If you watch modern action films, you will recognize a specific archetype, the heavily armed, thick-accented South African contractor navigating a chaotic combat zone. But within South Africa, the historical memory of these fighters is very different. For generations, the Afrikaner community has focused on the image of the Boer hero, a deeply religious pioneer taking up arms to defend a frontier farm. The global footprint of South African security personnel today is a very real phenomenon, but it isn't a Hollywood invention. It is the byproduct of a specialized military diaspora that has been evolving for nearly 4 centuries. By tracing the lineage of this warrior class, we can see how a localized agrarian survival tactic mutated into a multi-billion-dollar pillar of the global private military industry. The roots of this tradition began on the harsh frontiers of the Cape Colony in the 17th century. European settlers, cut off from traditional armies and facing constant border conflict, had to organize their own protection. This shows the stark contrast between traditional European armies and the early Boer commando system. Instead of a rigid, top-down hierarchy, the commandos were decentralized. Every male citizen between 16 and 60 was liable for service, and officers were often elected by the men they led. Because they were almost always outnumbered, the Boers relied on extreme mobility and stealth. They operated as self-contained units, riding deep into the terrain to strike and disappear, introducing the world to early asymmetric guerrilla tactics. They were early adopters of advanced technology. Boer engineers took massive European siege guns, like the 155mm long toms, dismantled them and hauled them across the interior on reinforced ox wagons to bombard British garrisons. This frontier crucible hardwired deep penetration tracking, logistical independence, and an instinct for irregular warfare into the cultural identity of the Afrikaner. In the mid-20th century, this informal militia tradition was absorbed by the National Party government and scaled up with vast state resources. To counter perceived communist expansion, the government adopted the total strategy doctrine. This transformed white South African society into a heavily militarized garrison, using mandatory conscription to field a massive professional force. Decades of high-intensity conflict in Angola and Namibia led to the creation of elite units engineered for African counterinsurgency. Groups like the Reconnaissance Commandos, the Recces, and the 32 Battalion became the most specialized tools in the state's arsenal. By the 1980s, the border war had forged a highly technical warrior class that was uniquely adept at fighting fluid insurgencies in the African bush. In 1994, the democratic transition began dismantling the old security establishment. The state integrated the apartheid-era military with its former enemies in the liberation movements to form a new national defense force. Thousands of elite, career soldiers suddenly found themselves without a professional home. Many felt politically marginalized and economically vulnerable, leaving a massive surplus of combat labor with no place to go. The private sector stepped in to fill the vacuum. In 1989, a firm called Executive Outcomes began recruiting these veterans, recognizing that their specialized skills were now a marketable commodity. Executive Outcomes provided full-spectrum military services to governments across Africa. They deployed seasoned infantry trainers and air support, effectively repackaging the old military's tactical intelligence into a lethal corporate entity. The end of apartheid pushed South Africa's tactical expertise into the private market, creating the blueprint for the entire modern private military industry. Global demand for these services exploded following 9/11. As the war on terror scaled up in Iraq and Afghanistan, Western powers increasingly turned to private firms for logistics and security. This chart shows how significant the South African presence became. During the peak of the Iraq War, South Africa emerged as one of the top 3 providers of private military personnel in the world. These veterans filled high-value roles, leveraging their apartheid-era specialized training for elite VIP protection, intelligence gathering, and convoy security in some of the world's most hostile environments. During this era, the Boer brand transitioned from a regional force into a highly lucrative commodity in the globalized security market. Contemporary security firms export a distinct military philosophy alongside their physical labor force. One of the most influential frameworks is Composite Warfare. This African-developed doctrine is designed specifically to neutralize the fluid, irregular insurgencies that often defeat traditional Western military models. We see this in action today. Modern South African-led firms are currently active in regional conflict zones, such as the insurgency in Mozambique, providing armored support and strategic advice. The centuries-old ethos of the frontier commando, adaptability, mobility, and self-reliance, did not disappear. Instead, it evolved into a sophisticated, privatized global industry that continues to influence the nature of modern warfare.